And the Ospreys welcome us to another show here on Mystery Island. John O'Loughlin, welcome to McDuff Lives, and it's great to have our good friend Hervoye Morić back. We get together about every month and compare notes, and I always watch his X feed to see what he's doing. I also subscribe to his Substack because he's very prolific there, got a lot of material, and so it's always a privilege and a pleasure to welcome Hervoye Morić.
It's great always chatting with you, John. What's happening?
Hey, well, I stole that meme from you and put it on our thumbnail, and I thought, well, I at least could start off by giving you credit. It's interesting meme. If you haven't seen it, it's kind of a picture with a bunch of kind of a flames in the background, like things are burning, and warplanes, and then 5 of our most recent presidents. For some reason there wasn't Biden there, and then that I thought, well, wait a minute, this means this was back in the first Trump administration because there was Trump there, but there wasn't Biden. So that shows that meme existed, back in 2017 when people were first reacting to the first Trump presidency. But the real point is, and I found a chart of it that shows it very clearly. It doesn't matter who's in power at all. It's not just death and taxes anymore. It's also war and national debt. And those two things have been going up increasingly. It's a tragedy that your meme points out that I think is good fodder for conversation. So let's get into it. What do you think? What do you think we can do? I know you and I, we feel like we can do a lot of help by waking people up, just doing our work every day and putting it out there. But it's frustrating, isn't it?
Indeed, and by the way, you don't have to the meme. We all steal. Virtually everyone steals and reposts memes. So that was a meme I got from somewhere and I shared. And some people pointed out, where's Biden? And yeah, that I came across after I posted that updated version that was much nicer, that included Joe Biden, and it's triggered some of the hardcore MAGA folks, which is sad because I come at this from a non sort of partisan perspective, trying to look at things as objective as possible, but over the weekend it was U.S. warplanes bombing Sana'a or Yemen. This morning, I wake up to the news that it's a clip in Austria. Diplomats there and an Israeli ambassador to Austria, David Roet, says, "I will play golf in Gaza, whether you like it or not." And that sort of like attitude is, that's a warmongering attitude. It's not like I'm a diplomat and let's try to save the civilians and work out what's right. No, we're gonna play golf in Gaza. I don't care what you say. So it's just mad. Turkey, I read martial law in Peru, and Turkey. I booked my flights. I'm going to Croatia for the entire summer. I was gonna pass through Turkey and spend a few days there. Turkish Airlines is really good. But and they have an option that you can choose a stopover for however long you like, and they give you 2 nights free in the hotel, and you can check out Istanbul. But Erdogan arrested his opposition, and all hell has broken loose. And even this morning, X has suspended the account of the opposition. So it's kind of like showing you how big tech works in conjunction with global politics for the people that are on the globalist side, right? So it's like X, and we've had Elon Musk say, we'll regime change whoever we want. And so it's like this time they're coming to the aid of Erdogan. So that tells you all you need to know about, how big tech, Silicon Valley, and everything works. But yeah, that's my sort of initial thoughts there. Yeah.
Mine on the Yemen bombing is simply, this is just another blow against the Constitution and against the American people's belief in the constitutional separation of powers. my thing that bothers me the most is some uh, Trump supporting stuff that claims that the Constitution gives the executive power to the president, that the people of America overwhelmingly voted for the president based upon these policies, and therefore anybody in the bureaucracy that opposes the president's initiatives should be fired. And that is another blow against the Constitution, at least the Constitution that exists today. It didn't exist that way when the founding fathers created the country, but then along came the 14th and 15th Amendments, and now you've got a due process clause. And now, from there, you've got the whole progressive movement, which integrates committees and congressional hearings and oversight. You've got the State Department overseeing everything on behalf of our diplomatic security to make sure that we don't have any, commies or anybody leaking into our government. So what we are looking at is a real mesh of different control systems that we have inherited over the years. Many of them, I'm sure, put in place with the best intentions. But now I don't think it's fair to, and I think it's bad to try to deny that Congress has a vote in things like the HHS or because they're clearly part of the creation of all of these administrative agencies. Administrative law is a whole body of law, a huge body of law. And this is the voice of the people. One more point on that, and that is that if we do go down that road, which I think is where Joe Rogan is going, and I don't watch him much, but he's been very prominent lately on my X feed. The idea is, well, what it really turns out to is a plebiscite, a pure democracy that nobody ever wanted in the intellectual tradition coming from Greece. And then that means that it's goes right over to mob rule of whoever can buy the most votes, whoever has the greatest free whiskey party on the White House lawn, like Andy Jackson did. That's not the government that's going to keep this country running very long, especially with all the outside pressures that are being put upon us by the globalists, as we call them. So I would urge everybody to insist that we stick to the rules and follow the Constitution, preserve, protect, and defend it like our forefathers have done up to this point. We cannot drop the ball.
There will be blood on Yemen. Thomas Massie, I guess one of the handful of few good men. Nobody's perfect. Yeah, there's criticisms of him coming out lately, but he said the military-industrial complex demands sacrifice. And so as they've pivoted away from Ukraine, the MIC requires $50 billion a year spending. And so it's like, if we're not getting it for Ukraine, bomb Yemen, give us something. I mean, these people are absolutely insane. But I'm more of a cynical Balkan Croat, where what you're talking about, something I've been talking about the last week or two, in fact months and years, that I've sort of been emphasizing, is this move towards regional integration. So my focuses are always world government globalism and the algocracy or technocracy. And I don't know if you've seen the developments in the past week and this weekend. Like when I try to take the weekend off, like the Saturday or Sunday, that's when the big news drops and I don't have time to I'm out of pocket always. And so you had last week Project Syndicate, which is a globalist publication, and Euro Rubini, right? Dr. Doom, the economist, the globalist economist, he publishes a piece saying, well, there were two pieces. So he publishes a piece calling for North American Union, literally, explicitly. And he says North American Economic Union, And I wrote some stuff, and I gave an interview to a big Mexican YouTuber, Ruben Nuengas, who I'm a big fan of. And that term, North American Economic Union, I first spotted in the 1980 Bilderberg conference report. You can go to the conference report. 1980, they're talking about creating a North American Economic Union modeled on the EU. And here you have Nouriel Roubini, what is it, 45 years later, saying we need a North American Union now. And then Project Syndicate published another piece calling for world government and saying our model, our blueprint is the European Union. And then this weekend, you get, there may have even been other, Parag Khanna. He's another globalist intellectual, and he wrote a book, Technocracy in America. And he published a piece also specifically saying we need Trump to bring in a North American Union. And the final sort of, this weekend it was reported, I have the story in front of me here, Trump open to U.S. becoming British Commonwealth associate member. So he's meeting with the king, and King Charles is going to offer him a secret, make a secret offer. And it's like, given what you're saying about Constitution, I feel like that boat has, the boat has left. Like, we're now moving into regionalism, which is globalism, and the technocracy. And again, it's like, it's so simple. I've been talking about this for many months. You look at, I maybe last time I mentioned it with you, there's a plan from Clarence Strait to 1939, Union Now, which says we need to integrate USA with Britain and or Canada to form an Atlantic Union, which will be the basis then, which will be like the British Commonwealth, and that will be the basis for world union going forward. Now you see Trump say, yeah, I'll become part of the British Commonwealth, and they want to integrate Canada and USA, and Canada wants to integrate with EU, and it's kind of like, this is where we're at. They've built this momentum, and even the Mexican president, I was shocked to hear she gave a speech recently, and she actually mentioned explicitly integration. And some of for the Mexican analysts, we're worried. I don't know if you saw, they reported these extermination camps that were found in Mexico. So they found camps with hundreds of evidence of hundreds of bodies or corpses. But the weird thing, so this stuff happens here. And it's like an hour from where I live, right? Mm-hmm. So this stuff happens. But some of us astute Mexican analysts realized we're seeing the same, but a lot of it is being blown out of proportion. It's the same sort of propaganda playbook that was used for Al Qaeda and ISIS. And so what we're thinking is they're using terms like it's the Mexican Auschwitz, And so it's almost like they're preparing the ground to invade Mexico, to strike the cartels, which so they're creating that Al Qaeda ISIS propaganda pretext to then go into Mexico, start another war, and then what would be the solution again? North American Union. So, anyways, that's kind of when you talk about Constitution, I feel like we're already deep into this regional integration.
You know me. I'm going to stick with the Constitution.
I would like to too.
I'm not going to give up on it, and I'm going to stick to sovereignty too. The sovereignty of this country as a United States of America is non-negotiable in my mind. But a lot of people are ready to toss it out there. When Trump says things that sound crazy and outlandish, I always remember that his thing is to make a deal. It's called The Art of a Deal, his book. And so whether he tosses something out as some bait to start a conversation, or whether he's seriously going to drag us back into the arms of Mother England, we have no clue at this point. He was going to buy Greenland the first time, but that's just that. To me, that is like when I used to practice law. It was like if you wanted 50,000 to settle a case, you ask for 100. Okay. And that's how you got the cases settled. You didn't get the cases settled by saying you either give me a 50 or I'm going to walk away. You started out high and see what happened. And that is what I see happening there. I want to get back to what's going on with the military industrial complex, because it again, it adds another layer on what you've put forward, which is really a 1984 Orwell proposition of creating this he calls it Oceania, but it's Britain plus North America and some more South America, Australia, and then you have the other two. And the point of that book is that we always have that $50 billion going into the military, because there's always border wars that have to be fought, and you never stop with the border wars. And so, then the next thing you know, war is peace. Yeah, I mean, of course there's war. That's part of life. That whole dystopian philosophy that war cannot be avoided is just it's so wrong, but they push it at us 24/7 in the media and in kids' cartoons, and we're being brainwashed constantly, and we have been for all of our lives. However, once you realize it, you can step outside of it and do real research and real work, like so many good people are doing, digging into the philosophies like Courtney Turner does. She's got some great stuff out recently. In the other point that I wanted to make about the military industrial complex and its relentless drive to get that $50 billion coming in constantly, or gradually improving it, of course, is that the military industrial complex has been invested in by organized crime, for the past 100 years. And so, like George Webb has pointed out, and I think it's worth pointing out, that a company like General Dynamics was associated with the Chicago mob, and there's still a huge amount of mob money in our military industrial complex, which is kind of hard to say no when they say, send some special forces over there and start a brush fire war so we can go to Congress and get some more money, because we got to get that VIG.
I've always viewed, just your thought there, I've always viewed the organized crime or the mob mafia as sort of in the passenger seat. Like, I see the driving force as the mafia that controls the government, the occult societies, the financiers, and of course they work with the Mexican cartels, they work with, you name it. The Albanian mafia, they say, is pretty hardcore. Or I would just your thought. I feel like the mob is maybe in the passenger seat, and the military industrial complex is driving it. No.
The military industrial complex calls somebody up on the phone and says, hey, I won't use a ethnic name, but hey, Sam, this guy down in Panama is giving us a lot of trouble. Be great if something got done. Thanks, bye. And then they get the signal and they go and do the thing. And so they're the heavies. They're not just passengers. They're the active guys with the big clubs and the machine guns. So the enforcers, they're enforcers on the dark side. You got your LA police on the up, above, and then you've got your mafia below, and as above, so below.
And since you cited Crowley, and I wanted to respond to a comment, and I want to disagree with the commenter where they said, Courtney, it's not the Jews, it's Theosophist Turner. I don't always agree with Courtney on everything. In fact, I'll be on her podcast next month. She was on mine, I think, a couple months back. I go with, it's the Theosophists, it's not the Jews. Yes, there are Jews that are part of it. There's every group is part of the occultocracy. What the ex Satanist Mark Passio, He calls it the occultocracy. Anyways, I just wanted to comment on that.
Oh yeah, but I'm not going to spend an hour on theosophy.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was a thing I dug into 4 or 5 years ago. Got all the books, read all the books. Yeah, great stuff. And from there it goes. I think it connects very well to Webster Tarpley and the whole Venetian to Amsterdam to London banking system. And they have these philosophies to fool the common people, and the common people get fooled. What choice do you have if you don't have any information? That's what they're doing now. They're dumbing everybody down, to the point that if you want to get here from here to a point, somebody's house you've never been to 30 miles away, and if your phone doesn't tell you how to get there, then you're not going to get there. You have no clue as to how to do anything with a compass or a map. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I'm exaggerating, but to me, this is what I see going on: is that everything is going to come from your computer, or or maybe if Elon gets his way, it'll just be beamed into us.
No, that's true. I've met people in the city where I live that are from here that no longer. Like, I asked them, I'm like, aren't you from this city? Like, you don't know your own town that you lived in for decades? Like, it's like I can't compute. Like, it's inexplicable. Like, it's just as you said, without the Google Maps, they don't know how to get around the town where they've been born and spent their whole life. And just, you mentioned Tarpley and that crowd. Richard Bowe, whose work I like, I've interviewed him twice. He commented on the Trump joining the British Commonwealth, and his comment was, "It's 5D chess, right?" Because there's been a lot of making excuses, calling it 5D chess for all these increasing compromises that the RFKs are making, and the Trumps and all this.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, at one point, are we gonna just realize it's not 5D chess? And just going back to that, you mentioned border wars, and I was thinking of border. There was this story, an updated travel advisory from the Canadian government warns visitors to the U.S. who stay more than 30 days, they could face fines and misdemeanor prosecution. Something about, I guess if you're Canadian, you go to the U.S., technically there's like a rule you can stay for 30 days only, and then you have to register or something if you don't. And my comment again is, this is part of the algorithm ghetto. I said they're using this North American Union, Lucha Libre, World Wrestling Federation, all these spats between Canada and US, these apparent spats, tariffs this, tariffs that. They're generating this animosity now between Canadians and Americans. And I feel like that's all being created to normalize this. It's like they're trying to continue implementing the COVID 1984 style exit entry controls. And the problem is, too many people are hung up on partisan politics. It's like, you look at the comments on that post from the Canadian paper, and all these people are raging against Trump. And then the Trumpers raging against the left. And I'm like, guys, what they're doing is they're trying to normalize these strict totalitarian border controls. It's like, you don't see the forest for the trees. In Europe, it's funny how this year, October 2025, they're activating, Christine Lagarde said, the digital euro. The same month, they're activating the entry-exit system. The timing alone tells you what's going on. They say, "Oh, the euro, it's for your convenience, it's for your safety." The exit entry system is anytime you go to Europe now, you have to. They're going to take your iris scans and your fingerprints and all that. And so it's like they're creating the digital cashless system with your biometrics, which is going to be linked to your permissions for mobility. And then you have the third shoe to drop is the electronic travel authorization. So it's like you have to ask for a visa now for your visa. So if you you go to Europe, like you have your passport, you have the rule that says if you're an American, you can go visa free, I think, for 3 months or something. But you can't do that anymore. You have to fill out the travel authorization, which screens your social credit. And then if they deem you're not a thought criminal, okay, you can go to Europe. That has been delayed to 2027. So they're having more difficulty implementing that. But anyways, that was my little rant on I'm freaked out where it's going to get harder and harder for us to exit and enter wherever we want to go.
Well, Canada, it's been a thorn in our side that we don't recognize. It's beautiful. We love Canada. We love Canadians. We love. I love the fantasy that one day I might speak French. It's a gorgeous country that I've seen just maybe a 0.5% of it, and I have never been out west, never seen the Rockies or Alberta, and boy, would that be nice. It's not a huge population, and it's not a country that has a whole lot of internal industry of its own that it can stand up on its own. But the real thing about Canada is that it's been, as far as British policy, a real problem for America, where these Canadians over centuries now, and going back at least to the Civil War, have been provocateurs that aid in things like creating the Civil War or invading or taking over the FBI through the famous Division 5, merely taking over our foreign policy through the back door, and working with American politicians to what really created the ground for what we're looking at today, and that is the actual idea of an American president contemplating the insulting idea of rejoining the Commonwealth of the British nations. And not to take it as a slap in the face. Perhaps he was just being diplomatic, but he knows his base will go crazy if he were to actually move in that direction.
I mean, I was precisely thinking of that yesterday, and you get Alex Jones coming out, and he's sold out, in my opinion, and he's like cheerleading now for the establishment, and he's doing the 5D chess thing, and he's saying, "Oh no, Trump is playing them." He's just gonna, but it's like we just keep going down this road where it turns out that Trump keeps getting played. He's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see, right? But it's like, how many times do we have to? We'll see. We'll see. And I've been pretty good at extrapolating, the momentum and trajectory of where we're going. Where this North American integration stuff, the technocracy stuff, and so, and then you see the regional integration in other parts of the world, and it's almost like it can't. You can't stop it. But we have to keep fighting against the tide, right? Trying, as you say, to retain as much rule of law as possible, as difficult as that may be.
Yeah, it's always been the problem of the Supreme Court, and people, have always uttered the witticism of, is the Supreme Court infallible because it's final, or is it final because it's infallible? And yeah, I think the Supreme Court can make mistakes. I think the Supreme Court might even get ideologically passionate members that would vote in a way that's really anti-American. I mean, we have a history of that with Dred Scott's decision, and things that our country doesn't stand for, but being ruled on by the Supreme Court, and yet the country survives. So I think the separation of powers. The big impediment is the lack of an informed citizenry, and the citizenry are being led this way and that by Pied Pipers of every color, that say, you know, oh, we've got to save trans rights. That's our number one thing. Or we've got to prevent nuclear war, which is our number one thing. And the problem is that the general public is too busy and too distracted and have, you know, so many issues, including more and more health issues as time goes on, that they just can't do it. So they it seems to me that they just kind of form a consensus of people among their friends, and gradually they become more and more solidified in that common opinion, whatever it is, that they'll fight for it. And the next thing you know, we'll end up with brother fighting brother like the Civil War again. It's our communication across mass media is probably the most destructive thing to America, if you step back and think about it, that of all the terrible things that are going on.
Well, what you just mentioned is something that I often think about as well, particularly this weekend. I came across a tweet from Steve Patterson. I think he co-wrote that book, Hijacking Bitcoin. I'm not sure. I bought the book, haven't read it yet. But he wrote a comment. I don't know when it was posted, but he says, it's remarkable how many people believe themselves intellectually superior for repeating what authority tells them. It's also remarkable how school is structured to reward students for repeating what authority tells them. I wonder if there's a connection. And, you know, myself, we were all students, and you know, I guess some of us in different countries. I went to the U.S. public schooling, and also being myself a former teacher, I think he nails it. And just what you said, it's getting more difficult to reach people. Just what he said, a lot of people today that follow the official narrative, they've made up their mind. You know, they've you know, this is the narrative, and they've joined that group consensus of the official narratives and everything, and it's like we live in two worlds. And I feel like sometimes when you're in physical space with them, like maybe at a gathering or a party, you can't broach subjects. You just kind of have to completely avoid any intellectual. You have to talk about the weather and sports and inane things, which is,
And I'm willing to do that. I am. I don't need to talk about politics. You know, as a matter of fact, politics and religion are two things that traditionally are not spoken of in social gatherings, and unless there's a certain, you know, certain reason for it. And this is the other, you know, why do we all have to talk about who we're voting for all the time? Well, why did we go to so much trouble to write a constitution, you know, in such a way that we have a secret ballot? We have secret ballots in order to make it easy for us to vote our conscience. If we're encouraged to just go around and say, "Oh, I'm voting for blue, I'm voting for red, I'm going to vote blue," what are you going to do? "Oh, I'm voting blue too." "Oh, well, what about her?" "Oh, well, she's voting blue." "What about that guy over there?" "Oh, he's voting red." "Oh, well, too bad about him."
But I'm referring even more to kind of like we were talking about, to talking about the issues without, let's say, it's like putting aside the partisan stuff. Like, I think we should be able to, you know, you're sitting at a party or something and you're talking about the issues, not like the partisan politics. I think we should be able to discuss that stuff. And, you know, yesterday, I had so much fun. So yesterday, when I was on that Mexican podcast, it's got a huge audience, and it was in Spanish. And one of the guys, he's a Mexican who's expatriated to Canada. He's been there for many years, and he happened to be passing through town yesterday. He's like, "Hey, let's meet for a coffee." And I was just like, "Oh, awesome!" We hung out for a number of hours, and for me, you know, it's kind of like someone who gets it. We can talk about all of these things in person. It's like, wow, I don't get to do that as often. But I think we should all, you know, we should be able to talk about the issues. Not getting, you know, it's kind of what you're talking about. We can all imagine you're at some party, and then you mention Trump or Kamala, and then there's that reaction like, "Oh, you're a Trump. Oh, you're a Biden." Like, oh, come on, people, let's get past that. But they've been programmed to have that reaction, like, oh, Trump is Hitler. Oh, Biden is whatever. And it's like, I'm not a fan of either. So.
Let's talk about Europe and Ukraine a little bit, because that ties in with the idea of people putting the Ukraine flag on their social media icons, or bumper stickers, or and perhaps it's dying down a little now, but it's been going on for the whole quote special military operation, and again, with the media control in Europe, I find anyone I communicate with in Europe is like, oh God, we've got to support Zelensky. He's fighting for democracy, and they really believe that stuff. And I'm like, oh no, we can't even have a conversation, because I really think it's very interesting, the negotiations that are going on right now. I really think that it's really worth it to talk about in terms of stopping war, saving lives, finding some common ground. But once you put that flag on your social media, then what you're telling me is that you're not open to discussion. I've made up my mind, like you just said. I'm committed. This is my group, and I'm sticking with my group. And if you're not with me, then you're against me.
There was a meme I saw over the weekend. Nina Byzantina, I think she's a Russian. She's got a big account. And IKEA, they said, I think Russian spies bombed IKEA because they had the same colors of the Ukraine flag, something like that. But you're right. I mean, I still get folks I know in the Fourth Reich, in the European Soviet, the European Union. They'll send me memes of, someone sent me one not long ago of Putin walking his dog, which was Trump. It's just like, look, I'm not a fan of any politician, really. I think Putin is just like any other politician. But really, this idea that Putin is running the show, I mean, one of my thoughts is, I mean, in many senses, Russia is behind the ball on many aspects of development and power. They're not weak, but the West is far, the Western institutions, the IMFs, all that stuff, the militaries. I think if we got down to it, Russia would probably succeed in defending itself like it did against Napoleon and Hitler. So I'm not saying they probably wouldn't successfully defend themselves in the Third World War, but to think that the Kremlin is that powerful to be able to manage a Western leader to this extent, I'm like, come on, guys. Look, have you been to Russia? It's like I don't think they have that broad a reach. And then the other point was, besides Russia, someone sends me a message from Germany saying, did you, and it's one of those normie people. And it's like, our conversations are usually related to normie stuff. And the first thing they write is like, did you see the Nazi salute by Elon? And I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like, look, I'm not a fan of Elon, but not for that reason. It's like, he's been programmed, mainstream media. Oh, Nazi salute, Elon the Nazi. And he's like, okay, yes, Elon Nazi, bad. And it's like, look, he's bad because he's implementing technocracy. It's not because, so the Europeans are just, I've seen some of the footage of the European Union politicians. Virtually all are, all these people that are all these different representatives of all these different EU countries, they're all virtually Bilderbergers. There's a great account I follow on Twitter X, Giorgio, some Italian guy who posts. He really, he's got the data, and he points out, oh, this politician who just did this attended these years at Bilderberg, and they're all Bilderbergers, and they're all doubling down on war. As you say, they're saying, we're not going to give in. We're ignoring Putin's any attempts at peace talks. And so, I guess I don't know where we're going to go with the peace talks. Well, you had Zelensky. They just bombed Moscow with drones, right? The biggest drone bombing so far just happened as Trump and Putin were trying to have peace talks. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's it's just obvious that Europe, France and Britain have bet the farm on winning this war in Ukraine, and they're desperate. And so they have to keep control of the media so that people don't figure it out. And they have to keep on finding more and more reasons to keep the United States involved in the war. And but what's fascinating is that somehow Trump is able to rise above all of these guys, and in a way that almost seems like I don't I don't know how to put this, but I think there's a place called the Office of Net Assessment that we talk about sometimes, and it seems to me that somebody at some very high level figures out, you know, we do best if the Democrats win, or now we do best if the Republicans win, and so we're going to kind of move the crown from here to there, for as long until we get what we want right now, and what they seem to want right now is Gaza. And so Trump's trying to get disengaged from Ukraine so he can go and do what he's supposed to do, and that is to give him Gaza on a silver plate, kind of like Saint 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 John the Baptist's head.
I want to go back to the EU thing for a second. I just remembered another thing I was banging on about the past week. I think one of their goals with Ukraine is they want to birth the EU army.
Yeah.
And there was a big news that, and in the past 2 weeks, you got the globalist bootlickers. I think his name is Max Bootlicker at the Washington Post wrote a piece saying a political, we're going to need like a political revolution to create a European army. So a whole bunch of op-eds from mainstream, globalist papers were talking about a unified European army. And then there was this report that the U.S. is discussing dropping NATO command. So since the beginning, since Eisenhower, U.S. has held NATO command. And now they're saying Trump administration is considering leaving NATO command to Europe. And for me, that's these are signals that the U.S. is going to pull away from NATO. It's like they've been the training wheels. NATO has been the early version of European Union army, and the U.S. has been the training wheels. It's like we're going to take the training wheels off now, and you guys go develop your own unified EU army, because they have, again, the goal is world government. The blueprint is the EU. We're talking about supranational everything. So they've already got one supranational unified political system, one centralized supranational economic system with the Euro and European Central Bank. What's missing? They're in the process of building that supranational culture. Babylon, multicultural EU, Europe, they need a unified military security structure.
Yeah.
And then that was one of the other pieces in that piece by Rubini, who talked about North American Union. He was talking about a unified fiscal union, Canada, USA, Mexico, banking union. And he said, and he was mentioning the EU, like, when we had with integration in Europe with these disparate countries like Greece and France and Germany, and Greece was poor, and they always put conditions. Look, Greece, you have to increase your per capita income, improve your in corruption, and then you can integrate. And he was saying the same thing for Mexico, which I've been saying also, that we're seeing Mexican income slowly rise, maybe American slowly decline. So they're trying to get to that sweet spot. So they can't just open migration, they say, until Mexico, matches that level. And what was my point? And he mentioned that one of those conditions was to have to join U.S. and Mexican military forces at the southern border of Mexico with Guatemala to protect from the migration. So I think that's one of the goals of this Ukraine stuff, is to bring about a unified, like an EU army. And then what happens to NATO? I don't know. Does NATO just change its name to EU army, or does NATO say, okay, we're going to morph into something else, like a world government? Or does NATO become the North American Union? army. I don't know, but you can kind of see like this is where they're trying to go. It's a laboratory, so they're experimenting.
Couple things on Europe. A lot of people that I've read are saying, Europe cannot hold because of the internal fears amongst the countries. France will always be afraid of Germany, for instance. And there's always going to be the difference in the cultures between the South and the North. That Germany versus Greece thing that was really hot thing 20 or 30 years ago, or how it could be solved by economic means. You could figure out a way to create some bonds and get some investment in Greece from German people, and the increase. It could be done if there's a will to do it. But I think that even within a lot of countries, like inside of Italy, inside of the former Yugoslavia, the trend toward balkanization all over Europe is still strong. And the idea that Europe can hold together without a dictatorial force at the top, doesn't make sense. So what you're really saying is that Europe is heading into that totalitarian state. Can you imagine Ursula von der Leyen with a 500,000 person army, wearing a uniform and calling the invasion of Russia? That's the insanity that they're headed towards. Is because I don't see Russia invading Europe at all. I think this is all of the other way around. That NATO wants to take down Russia, balkanize Russia, carve it up, serve out the pieces like they did back in the 90s with our good friend Jeffrey Sachs.
Yeah, and I think just one more aspect regarding the situation, this attempt to militarize is another reason they're maybe doing, as you say, things are difficult in the Fourth Reich, but they also might be militarizing to, if not for Russia or whatever war theater, to keep to create the structure to keep down the population from rising up as things deteriorate. I interviewed leftist professor some years back, William I. Robinson, who wrote 2 fantastic books on global police state and what he calls global civil war. So as the global financial system deteriorates, you're going to see in country after country after country civil war. He calls it's a global civil war. And so, as I was mentioning, it's no surprise when I hear, Turkey is collapsed. The lira dropped to its lowest on record after Erdogan went after his opposition. Peru just declared martial law. You're having country after country. Every few months you see countries just implementing martial. South Korea tried to implement martial law, right, and kick off war with North Korea. Probably Washington was egging them on, and so I think that's the other part of it. As the system collapses, the government's looking to rush to implement measures and develop militaries and police and intelligence structures to be able to keep us from rioting and creating another revolution. So I think that's also part of the game. That's why they're trying to bring in all these digital controls. And then, Ursula announced that rearm Europe, 800 billion. And basically and there was the other article that said EU citizens have 10 trillion euros in savings.
Yeah.
We're going to pilfer that
Yeah.
to create the prison. You're going to use your own money to build the prison that we're going to use, again, it's absolutely insane. And then there was some backlash, and now they're renaming rearm. They always do this. They just rename it to something else. And so, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that point about the European savings, though, is huge, because somebody came up with, probably at a Bilderberg meeting, is thinking, I wonder how much money is just sitting in savings accounts, not doing anything. It's not doing them any good. It's not doing the banks any good. It's just sitting there. Why can't we create a sovereign wealth fund in which we consider all the assets that are in our country to be part of sovereign wealth? And then we could use that as security to borrow some more money from the Rothschilds, or and then we'd have all this money that we could pay an army with. What a great idea. Yeah, the bankers and the military industrial complex are going to work together, and the talking heads on TV are going to cover it all up. And well, we've only got a few minutes left, and I noticed that you mentioned a new term to me that I learned this morning from James Corbett, and that term is algocracy. Do you want to explain what that is? Because that's what we're talking about, technocracy. But with AI is based upon what? Algorithms, and algocracy is the new term of the moment.
Yeah, I saw the headline. I haven't been able to read it. I subscribe as well to Corbett's email list, and I first used that term back in March of 2020. I was a guest on Spiro Skouras's show. He had a big channel, but it was deplatformed twice and just gave up. He's still on X, posts very sporadically. And I was reading these papers by these existential risk gurus. Like there's a guy called Phil Torres and Nick Bostrom, right? And back in 2020, I'm reading Nick Bostrom's paper where he says, human governance sucks. It's corruptible. What we need, I mean, this is basically what he says. You can read the paper. He says we need a world totalitarian surveillance state run by artificial intelligence, AI, and algorithms, which is uncorruptible. The algorithms are uncorruptible.
Just like Bitcoin.
Government by algorithm, government by AI. And so, when I was talking to Spiro, I said, the whole purpose of COVID was to bring in global algocracy, QR codes, digital passports, digital cash. That was the principal reason of the 2020 thing, the thing that happened in the 2020. And they're now using other pretexts to just continue that. That's the main play here. And so, yeah, what Corbett brings up, and now you have Joe Rogan and Mark Andreessen and all these guys talking about algocracy, rule by algorithm, rule by AI. And that's why, Doge, the wrecking ball, is coming in. So you got Doge in the US. There's calls now for Doge in the EU. There's calls by Russian Duma, politicians for Doge in Russia. Is that some coincidence? No. So they're creating global Doge. And the one in Russia, the report that I read, they wanted to get rid of a third of Russian politicians. And I think they'll have the technology, right, to replace a lot of politicians. But that's been the goal. So you don't need a lot of workers. So people will be losing jobs. AI is coming into education, and it'll be replacing T-shirts. And so the AI will be replacing a lot of humanity and the government. And then whoever is behind the dial on the AI and the algorithm, they're going to have greater control over everything. Sounds like fun.
Move to the country, blow up your TV, eat a lot of peaches. The dream of my generation, expressed by John Prine, to get away from all this crap, all this war, all this imposition of the panopticon, now the digitally mastered panopticon, where we're all observable in our prison and we better not step out of line. And we see it coming. So many of us see it coming, but so many people just prefer to live in that kind of nirvana-like state that, hey, I'm doing well, my iPhone takes the best pictures in the world, and I'm, my kid's going to the best school, and I'm like on cloud nine, and so don't trouble me with all of that stuff. It's it's a real conundrum, but as you say, we do what we can. I am enjoying it. I hope you are.
It's the best of times, the worst of times. Just an example. I tried to get away from WhatsApp. It was years back. They had the privacy thing, and they can read everything. And I try to use alternative apps. I have them all, but just today I was thinking, I've been pulled back in because some of these people that I'm meeting and doing podcasts with, they use WhatsApp, and like, honestly, if I don't use it, I'm going to have difficulty doing what I'm doing as a podcaster. It's like, I
Wow.
have to use it. And I don't think that's the line in the sand yet. I think there will come a point where I won't be able to cross that line once we go full, mark of the beast digital ID. And then I don't think we're there yet, but it's getting difficult. And I'll share this tweet from yesterday. In some ways, this guy's an ideological enemy. This is from the No Virus group, who they played a clip of me mocking me, but I've met him, and I think he still follows me. But yeah, he does. Alexek, right? He's but what he posted, this is just my attempts. I don't care. I will cross lines and hug anyone, but he says, if you're scrolling, researching, worrying, consuming, and disassociating more than you're dancing, singing, moving, crying, laughing, feeling, creating, and spending time with people you love, you've got health all wrong. And I think that's a good point, right, on the balance of what we're discussing, and then, have a balance.
Get off the computer, get into the garden, which is, another way to put it. I agree, and I am guilty of spending too much time on the computer. But with spring weather coming, I'm going to be out in the garden. I told you I broke my wrist about 6 weeks ago, and the thing is healing up. So I'm going to be out there digging and planting in no time at all. And yeah, life is great. Life is beautiful, and boy, I wish that we could just somehow get equal time on all the media, to just listen to Hervoye and John once, you guys, come on. I know what's going to happen on Rachel Maddow tonight. I know what Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert have to say. I know you've seen it all a million times. Why not listen to something different? And so, my mission is to try to get people to investigate it. And thank you so much for a great interview you did of me, which elucidates my dad's life, because that's my passion, is to find out, what the hell did this deep state do to my dad, and what is the message we can learn from his life in the times that these things that we're facing now were being set up. The assassination of President Kennedy, I think, was them really coming out of the woodwork and saying, we're taking over. And they've taken over, and but they don't own everything yet, and they certainly don't own our hour together here at McDuff Lives. Thank you, Hervoye.
Yeah, thanks. We didn't get to the JFK files. You mentioned Life is Beautiful. That was a good movie, right? The Italian Life is Beautiful. But unfortunately, that actor, I can't find it, but he came out recently, the actor from Life is Beautiful, and he said the EU is the most magnificent thing that's been created, and I'm like, oh my goodness, just shut up and do your acting, don't know. Anyways, all right, good chat.
I know. And yes, well, I guess there's a reason we didn't do the JFK files, because there's not a whole heck of a lot to talk about in them, at least yet. So we'll keep pressing for another, I think they owe us at least 3,000 more pages. And then whatever they got, I'm going to see what we got. And then I'm going to start FOIAing, because it's time to get more information out by hook or by crook. And so, no, we're not stopping. We're going to absorb what we got, and we're going to keep on moving. Hervoye Morić, Geopolitics and Empire. Be sure and follow him on Substack and X, and support him. He's doing great work. Bye now.